Welcome, friends,
to the How To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug. And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it. Let us proceed. Well, uncles, hello.
Yes.
Here we are, the mighty three.
And wherever you go, there you are.
And there you are, and here we are. So that established, we are ready to do another show. Yay!
Sure.
So I believe that Uncle Doug is going to talk about how shoe purchases can affect your survival rate.
Great day for the Nike brand. Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and then Uncle Dan, you've got an interesting and maybe seasonal segment, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna delve into the holidays.
Yeah.
it's tis the season.
The holidays are always very special here at the How To Heretic.
Grill up some stuffing or whatever it is people do.
Yes, enjoy the foodstuffs of the people that welcomed us and we kindly exterminated.
That's right. Tighten the buckles in your shoes and in your hat and get ready.
And then we're going to have a nice kind of how-to conversation, continuing on one we already had, about how things change over time.
Yeah, we've got a lovely guest. Professor Nathan is going to come in and help us out.
Yep, and we're going to talk about a monkey's uncle.
Yes, indeed.
And there you go. And just one last time, we want to make sure we announce that there are still a few days, if you would like to be so kind as to donate to Modest Needs.
That's right. This is Vulgarity for Charity. There's still a few days for us. You listening, this episode is going to drop for our patrons on a Monday,
the 19th,
which gives them plenty of time. And for the rest of you on Wednesday, if you listen to this anytime after that, Wednesday the 21st is the cutoff date, so you're too late.
Right. So if you make sure to make that donation of $50 or more to Modest Needs before midnight Eastern Time on November 21st.
And then email the receipt from that, along with whom you would like to have roasted by whomever, to
vulgarityforcharity@gmail.com.
That's right.
And somebody will get to it. Somebody will be
this is not our thing. We're helping out with it. But yeah, the guys at Scathing Atheist and Cogdis are great, and they do this mostly yearly now, and we're happy to help out.
And great news, they have met their matching grant goal. We have all together contributed to, all your generosity have contributed to more than $50,000 being raised.
That's so cool. Wow.
So keep it going. We'll set a record that next year they cannot hope to surpass.
And with that said, let us do a show.
Moving on. Hey, Uncle Mark.
Hello.
How many pairs of Nikes do you have?
You know what's crazy? For a homosexual, I have very few pairs of shoes.
Well, that's true. You're not a shoe guy.
Not a shoe guy.
You're barefoot in the studio right now.
No, I would not be barefoot in the studio because I love you two. And I would not make you endure what you would see with my boots off.
But unsightly.
But I don't own a single pair of Nikes because I want to keep my balls and I want to stay alive.
All right. Well, Uncle Doug's going to tell us about some fashion victims.
Yeah. Well,
one of Nike's most unfortunate sponsorships.
Yeah, exactly. Until the whole Kaepernick
before
thing.
Kaepernick.
Well, just as we go to record today, literally today, is the 40th anniversary of Jonestown.
Oh, is it really?
It really is, 1978.
Happy anniversary, Jim Jones.
And given that we've already talked about that...
so to any of our Guyanese friends out there,
exactly. You're welcome.
Enjoy in good health.
So I thought we'd talk about another much, much smaller mass suicide. And today, let's meet the Heaven's Gators.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So Heaven's Gate emphasis on was, an American UFO religious millenarian cult. One of the first to be referred to as a cyber cult due to the incorporation of the burgeoning internet into their operations.
It's a series of tubes.
Exactly. It was founded in 1974 in San Diego by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Mr. Applewhite was born in 1931 in Texas and was the son of a Presbyterian minister.
Okay, so he knew the biz.
Yeah, he did.
That's never a story that ends well.
Exactly. He went on to serve in the Army and then was fired from the University of St. Thomas in Houston for an alleged relationship with a male student.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey-oh.
It's getting juicy.
Bonnie Nettles was born in Houston in 1927 to a Baptist family, so also not going to end well.
Right.
She became a nurse and married in 1949 and subsequently had 4 children. Her marriage began to fray in 1972 when she started hearing instructions from a 19th century monk named Brother Francis.
Those are always the best.
That's a tough time for marriage.
So she was a ham radio operator.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She started to attend and host seances, and in fact, her meeting with Applewhite was apparently foretold by a fortune teller.
Oh, yeah.
So
You're going to meet a guy, probably don't listen to his last instructions.
Right, exactly. Well, in 1983, she had an eye removed due to cancer and was told that at that point that the cancer had spread throughout her entire body. However, part of her belief system was that she could not die, although apparently she could decay. And then she died in 1985.
Oh well.
Womp womp. Applewhite and Nettles met at a psychiatric hospital where Nettles worked and Applewhite was a patient.
Okay.
No red flags there.
No, we're on fine footing.
The two began creating what would become Heaven's Gate mostly from the King James Bible, my favorite, and the science fiction writings of Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke. They began to refer to themselves as Do and Ti. Do and T. I had to look up the pronunciation.
Okay.
D-O and T-I. That's how they referred to each other and themselves.
Who's dough and who's tea?
He's Do, she's Ti.
Okay.
And sometimes they refer to themselves as the two. Part of their belief system is that they were the two witnesses referred to in the book of Revelation. Now, I will not recap that book or talk more about it because it has claimed
Please
enough of my
don't.
free time of late.
Please don't.
However, if listeners would like to dive deep into that book, you can either listen back to episodes 58 and 60 or shut your head in a garage door. Either one will do.
Or run into a cave and ask it to collapse on you.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So she was working at the psychiatric hospital, and he was in the site. Was he there voluntarily?
Is it the details about why he was there are pretty sketchy.
Okay.
It had to do with that dismissal from the University of Houston, or that university in Houston. But he was a patient at the hospital while she was working there, and that's when they met.
So we don't know under what circumstances he entered, on his feet or in a bag.
Right, exactly.
His diagnosis was called crazy.
Yep, pretty much. The religion began to morph into a UFO cult, claiming, among other things, that God and Jesus and Satan were all advanced aliens possessing spacecraft, time travel, telepathy, and increased longevity.
Mormons kind of believe
Satan
that.
had Doug, you're saying Satan had a spaceship.
Precisely.
I'm down. I like this. That just everything just got cooler.
Do you remember that song from the Charlie Daniels Band, Satan Had a Spaceship? I think it was the precursor to The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
I just
I'm not
like
sure.
it as like a big devil head shaped thing, kind of big horns.
Right.
Yeah.
So Satan's race, known as Luciferians, used holograms to fake miracles and endeavored to trick mankind into not believing in God.
Oh, that is tricky when you use a hologram.
Yeah. Their belief system, which evolved over the 2.5 decades, preached that through denying oneself of mammalian characteristics such as family, friends, sexuality, individuality, jobs, money, and possessions, one could achieve the evolutionary level above human, or Tela.
Okay. So basically, give up everything that makes living worthwhile.
Yep.
And you'll be better.
Hey, guess how that's going to end. And lest you doubt Applewhite's dedication to the cause, he and 7 other male members of the group underwent voluntary castration in Mexico. So he believed it.
Huh.
I guess.
I mean, I've had some crazy times in Mexico, but came back with all my bits.
Just that face tattoo.
Yeah. Well, it was worth it. Mystery.
The cult went through several names during its time, including the Human Individual Metamorphosis, or HIM, Higher Source, and the Total Overcomers, for example.
The Total Overcomers.
I know, so dumb. They took
Sounds like a failed children's television pilot. Right? solving crimes and walking dogs.
They took to putting OD after their names, like Markady, Danity, or Duggity.
Okay.
That was their thing.
Hot duggity dog. That sounds great.
Exactly.
Does it mean anything?
Not that I could find.
ODY?
ODY. Yeah.
Oh, my.
So, like, they had a guy named Todd. He was Toddity.
What if your name was Melody?
Oh, God.
Melody.
Melody. They adopted language from Star Trek, referring to themselves as the crew and their bodies as vehicles. And they made most of their money curating websites in the brand new World Wide Web. They were like one of the first that you could go to and say, I've got a knitting company, I want a website, and they would set it up for you.
So they were cultist web developers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's their main source of income was web development.
Well, I mean, it's still a good income for a lot of people.
Hey.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
But as you find out, it's a deadly profession. So be advised.
Don't do it. Don't go into web dev.
The followers or crew of Heaven's Gate always carried a $5 bill and a roll of quarters in their pockets. The $5 bill was to pay panhandling tickets, which apparently they got a lot of, and the quarters were for phone calls, or they could be used to frag Vincent D'Onofrio if he couldn't keep up.
So wait, they would panhandle, and so they kept $5 with them just to pay off the ticket.
Is that a panhandling ticket?
That's what it was at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and in California where they ended up. So they as they travel, they
weren't that good at web development.
Well, that came along when they started in the 70s. There was no web.
Okay.
And so they were pretty itinerant, and they traveled across the country, and they didn't really have a source of income. Panhandling was their main source of income. And then I don't know if once the web development took off, they ended up with some major properties, so it must have paid off. And I think the $5 bill and the quarters were kind of like a tradition.
I think it's
at
just
that point.
I think the quarters were just about like you got it's paying the toll to get on Satan's spaceship.
They all of the ones who ended up popping their clogs had a $5 bill and quarters in their pockets.
So it went from you get out of jail free to a yarmulke. It was a religious.
Yeah.
Okay, why not?
Why not?
Sure.
One possible sign that things were headed in an ominous direction. In 1996, the cult purchased alien abduction insurance for 50 of its members that would pay up
From
to...
whom?
I don't know.
Who sells that?
From Lloyd's of Omaha.
Yeah, if listeners
Lloyd's of Venus.
No doubt. If listeners of the podcast would like to purchase alien abduction insurance, make your checks out to Uncle Doug here at the How to Heretic.
Wait. Rewind a little bit, Doug. So start again with the alien abduction insurance.
So they covered 50 of their members. It covered up to $1 million, which covered abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens.
And how did they propose one would prove this?
I don't know.
What police report do you have?
I mean, you got is some rogue guy in an insurance agency going,
absolutely.
I mean,
sure, I'll cover that.
I mean, at some point, an insurance agent or adjuster is the same as a bookie.
Right.
Yeah, they'll take a bet on anything, right?
Right.
Well, and also, he knows you're not, okay, they're all gone? Okay, prove that it was aliens and I'll pay out.
Exactly. Right. What drove Doe to do what came next is kind of a mystery, but the coincidence
that
of
voodoo that Doe do.
Exactly. The coincidence of the siege at Waco in 1993 and then the arrival of the Hale-Bopp comet in 1995 were just too delicious to pass up.
Oh, yeah.
You'd never let a crisis go to waste.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or a celestial, just random occurrence.
Yeah, the Hale-Bopp comet, incidentally, was named after the two astronomers who discovered it in 1995. And just for context, the last time it passed through the inner solar system was in 2215 BCE, and the next time won't be until 4377. So
Holy smokes.
It's an infrequent comet.
I want to know who killed themselves that first time. Back in the Bronze Age.
That is a big orbit.
And what's funny about that is one of the guys who discovered it, Alan Hale, actually said, and this is true, quote, "We are probably going to have some suicides as a result of this comet."
What?
Yeah, true statement.
And they didn't discover it till 95.
Yeah, because they saw it coming. They said they actually were the first ones to actually witness it coming into the inner solar system. And he just, I guess, assumed that every time a comet comes through, some group of people kills themselves. So,
boy, what kind of a world do they live in? Astronomers are like, oh fuck, well, this is going to mean some people die.
I have never before known the direct, apparently, correlation between comets and mental health.
Right? Yeah.
Right. But now I do. Thank you, Uncle Doug.
Now we know. Yeah.
So in early March of 1997, Doe recorded his last 1.5-hour video, which you can still watch on YouTube. It's pretty milquetoast pablum, and Doe looks like if Mike Pence had lived another 100 years and then started a cult.
Yeah, he's a very peculiar. He doesn't blink.
Doesn't
right?
blink, and he's very kind of skinny, very skinny.
Yeah, he looks like a skeleton just had skin over it.
If you had to
Exactly.
pick a cult leader out of a lineup, they wouldn't need anyone else in the lineup.
Well, no, you'd have to say because if there was a guy with a ponytail and another guy, you'd have to say which one is the UFO cult,
Right.
and
then
which
you'd be
one
like,
is the capoeira instructor?
right? You'd be like that guy definitely UFO.
No doubt.
Right.
In the video, Doe is seated in his finest lawn furniture in front of a screen that is the video recording of what he's being recorded. I'm trying to say is that they did that thing where it's like two mirrors facing each other, so he's kind of like
Stacked
echoing.
up.
He's stacked up.
He's
like
eternal.
That. Yeah.
Love it.
The video gets pretty dark because they pan over the rest of the audience at one point and kind of let everybody have their moment in the camera. And these are all people who would be dead in days.
So was this a suicide note?
No, it was kind of. It was like their last testament.
Right.
It goes on for an hour and a half of him just talking ad nauseum about nothing. But when you look out over the crowd and then you stop individually on each of these people, they have weird haircuts, but they seem totally lucid. They're laughing. They seem of sound mind. It's pretty creepy.
Yeah, they did a. Correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. I think they. It was a very unisex look,
Very much so.
Yeah, everybody had a buzz cut or whatever. And
Yeah.
tracksuit and
Yep.
yeah.
But it's they didn't
Which
seem
sounds pretty appealing. I'm just saying, could we all just go
It's
to
the
that?
future liberals want.
it's the future I want. So then on March 24th, he and 38 of his followers, all sporting similar Romulan haircuts for the ladies and buzz cuts for the men.
Right.
They had black sweatpants and Nike Decades athletic shoes.
Deathcades.
Must have been a great day for Nike. They ingested phenobarbital mixed with applesauce and washed it all down with vodka.
Wow.
So there you go. And then they
Sounds
placed.
like a great last meal.
Yeah, it's not bad. And then they placed plastic bags over their heads to make sure it took. Now,
Right.
again with the Star Trek motif, they all had armbands that read, quote, Heaven's Gate Away Team. And in one of the strangest coincidences of all, one of the members that committed suicide was named Thomas Nichols, brother of actress Nichelle Nichols,
Oh my God!
who played
Uhura.
Uhura on the original Star Trek.
Are you serious?
For real. Isn't
Her
that-
brother.
Her brother.
Weird.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
And so what they did is 15 members killed themselves first, and then the remainder dressed them, took the bags off their heads. They were all dressed, arranged them, took the bags off their heads, and then put a purple sheet over them that you see. Then 15 more killed themselves, and then the remainder took care of them. Then 6 killed themselves, and the last 3, which included Doe, took care of them. And then Doe killed himself, and the last 2 were the only ones found with the plastic bags over their heads.
Interesting.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I mean, it was.
Let me tell you something.
This took days.
If I'm in a cult and the cult leader is like, "I'll be the last," I am not going to commit
you know what?
suicide.
You go-
I'm not falling for that,
You
you
go
bullshit
first.
motherfucker.
Here's how you convince me that you believe this shit. You go first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what was the total body count?
39.
Total.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I pay attention to cults. Obviously, it's something I'm interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a full-grown adult when this happened. I don't remember the stage that there were people.
Yeah,
I
it was
just remember
something
seeing the bodies on the bunk beds. And I'm like,
Exactly.
how did they have the presence of mind
Yeah.
to stay in that position and not just shit themselves? And
I didn't know that either
And
until
yeah, like
researching for this.
convulsing or whatever. You think
fall off
someone
the bed,
Yeah, all sorts of
or
stuff.
get desperate and try to get out or
Yep.
whatever.
I don't know how. What was it? Phenobarbital or something?
Phenobarbital, which is an epilepsy drug mostly.
Yeah.
And
And vodka, so it's
applesauce. And then the phenobarbital put them to sleep.
Okay.
And then they asphyxiated.
Oh, so they died of the asphyxiation.
Most of them did.
so
yeah.
this was
And I mean,
this
but-
was kind of murder.
well. I mean, the 15. They all knew what they were getting into. If you watch the video, they're like, he's like, we're out of here. It's been great.
Right.
They knew what they were doing. And then when the 15 died, the remainder, none of them tried to flee. None of them tried to jump out a window, as far as we know.
They watched their compatriots die,
Yeah.
and then they did the same thing.
And then they got them all arranged up. Then they sat on the bed and took the phenobarbital and the applesauce.
Fucked up.
Yeah,
Like,
and they seemed just calm and serene. It's so strange. I
so
don't know
there's no survivors.
Well, interestingly, a couple more people killed themselves in that were members of the cult, and then a guy in California who was not a member of the cult killed himself and left a note that he was hoping to catch a ride with Heaven's Gate. There's at least 2 surviving members of the cult who maintain the website, which is still online.
Wow.
It has not been updated or altered since the event. So it's a great like kind of mid-90s website.
It's a good. Oh yeah, that's a time capsule right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of leaving your dead child's bedroom as it was.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Jesus. And on the website, it contains the group's position against suicide, which counterintuitively speaks very glowingly about the Masada mass suicides in 73 BCE.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty. So it's like the statement against suicide, and in their statement against suicide, they talk about how great it was in Masada, right, when the Romans were coming and the Jews off themselves rather than be subjugated. So, yeah, that's kind of it. After that, there's, it petered out.
So you think? Weird.
So, okay, the suicide is an insane event that took place, a staged event with a lot of people who should have done something and could have done something who did nothing. And then we laughed a lot about all their bullshit up front. But what about all the ridiculousness? Like, what made it so magnetic to people that they...
Well, here's the thing. It was a 20-plus-year-old cult. And I don't know how it wound out, but only 39 people killed themselves. After 20 years of preaching this shit, it was only open to people over 18, so kids weren't allowed in the cult.
Interesting.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, only 39 people went through with it. And of the outside of that group, no one alerted authorities or no one tried to stop it, which makes it seem like that was kind of it. Like there wasn't an enormous group of people of which this was a small part.
I wonder if that was like the ruling class or the upper echelon.
It's hard to say. They didn't really have a priesthood. It was super, you lived a life of total poverty and denial of anything pleasant.
Well, you had with a roll of quarters $10, so you had $15.
Yeah,
not total poverty.
No,
yeah,
you
some applesauce.
Get yourself out of a panhandling.
You can buy yourself some applesauce and a cocktail. Jesus Christ, what a shitty.
Yeah,
mess.
So what a strange. And that was it. There was no, there's no resurgence of Heaven's Gate, and there's no one to speak of that still follows it.
Well,
so.
People out there listening today, maybe it's
start it up.
Everything old is new again. So
that's right.
Good luck out there.
See if you can get the website.
All right, thanks, Uncle Doug.
You're welcome.
Let's move on.
Moving on.
Well, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Mark.
I have long wondered who the first people that figured out that if you traced your hand, you could make it look like a turkey is. I've always wondered where that tradition comes from.
You know what I wish I had?
What's that?
Buckles on my shoes. Laces are for losers.
Yeah. The buckles are simpler, better. It was a better time. And I think Uncle Dan's going to prove that to us.
I am going to do that. And by the way, it was the elementary school kids on the Mayflower who actually first did the turkey thing.
Right.
Just so that you know.
Right. It was Mrs. Standish's third grade class.
Yeah. So those who haven't figured it out, I'm going to be telling you the harrowing tale of one group's deep bravery in the face of horrific religious oppression, and of their radical acceptance of people of very different from themselves. Just kidding.
We're talking about religion, Dan.
I'm going to tell you about the American pilgrims.
Yeah.
And I'm going to first start by saying that pilgrims, as a word, is heavily quotationed in my mind. Because what the fuck? Look, I don't generally like to dip back into my Mormon roots as I prepare these things, but in the style of the horrible Mormon church talk, I'd like to start with a definition.
All right.
Yes.
Merriam-Webster's Dictionary.
Dictionary.com. Look, I've updated it for the modern era. Yeah. Dictionary.com defines pilgrim as a person who journeys, especially a long distance, to some sacred place as an act of religious devotion. I mention this only because that word in no way applies to the small group of English dickheads we're about to discuss.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it seems they stretch that term pretty far.
Yeah, there was nothing sacred.
There's no holy site
here in the Americas.
Not
that
yet.
They were going. Excuse me. Please hold.
Punch him in the chest.
Somebody take over for me.
Plymouth Rock landed on him.
Good Lord. I'm going to take a little sip.
Yeah, have a little sip of water.
There were sacred sites in the Americas when the Pilgrims got here.
They're
just not theirs.
Not sacred to any Christians.
None they would give a shit about.
Right. Yeah, they were happy to smash those into the ground so that they could build a hut or whatever.
Or a winter or two later try to eat them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, my God. Okay, so a pilgrim is someone traveling to something, not away from something, which is what our people did. So I'm not going to call them that. I'm not going to call them the pilgrims. To our international listeners, that is what they are universally. These are, some of the early colonizers of this continent.
Let's call them what they were, unwanted immigrants.
Well, I'm going to call them by what they were called for a couple centuries after the fact, which was the old comers.
Oh.
Ew. The old comers?
The old comers.
Huh.
Yeah.
Rather than the newcomers.
Rather than the newcomers. I guess they were the newcomers at that time.
Right.
Then now they're the old comers.
Okay.
I don't know. They called them the old comers. Literally until
I've never heard that before.
the 1820s. The 1820s is when somebody discovered one of the major accounts of the whole voyage and everything was by a guy named William Bradford, and it wasn't until the 1820s when someone noticed Daniel Webster, actually, speaking of Webster's dictionary, noticed that Bradford had called them saints and pilgrims. And so he was like, so Webster started referring to them as the Pilgrim Fathers, and the name stuck.
All right.
You'd think Webster would know how fucking words work. Weird. Apparently not. Anywho, I should have done the Webster's dictionary definition. I just went to the first one.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was the classic.
Yeah.
opportunity missed. God damn it.
Yeah,
All right.
for those listeners who don't know, in Mormon culture, when you give a speech, there's a very specific
Yeah, when you give a talk
order.
at church.
You give a talk at church.
Yeah. And it's usually a kid who's got to do a 3-minute talk.
Yep.
And they got to bulk it out.
Yep.
So
But
Webster's
But
dictionary.
you open with a joke.
and-
Oh, yeah.
Then you do the definition.
Right.
Yes.
And then you read read what was written in the dictionary after that,
Right.
and then you're done.
And then, yeah, exactly.
defines faith as.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Yeah. So the old comers started out as Brownists in a little village called Scrooby
Okay.
in central England.
These people could not have been conscious of how hilarious all of their names and things were.
Oh my God, it's delightful.
The old comers of Scrooby.
Yeah.
become the brownest of Scrooby.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny about it is they were super sex positive and they would have had a great time with all this.
Nope. We're gonna go with nope on that one. The Brownists, for those who don't know, were a group of religious separatists who thought that the Puritans were pussies who wouldn't go all the way. We're going further than the Puritans.
Splitters.
Just to give you a sense of where we're at. Separatists at that time were fighting the really important fight of trying to make sure that the Church of England didn't look too much like the Catholics.
Right.
That was super important to them, like literally life and death important. We're talking about differences like, no, I think that control of the church should be centralized. No, I think control of the church should be at the congregational level. Let's murder each other.
Let's kill each other. And when we're done with that, let's go kill some Native Americans.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A little quick history of religion in England in the 1500s, just so that we can sort of 15 and 1600s. Henry VIII, most of you will know this, but Henry VIII became king in 1509. At that time, England, like most of Europe, was Catholic and pretty much fine with that until Henry got married. But his wife, Catherine of Aragon, simply refused to make him a son. And he got
Bitch.
He got pissy about it and decided he wanted a new wife. But Catholics, you don't get to get a new wife.
That's right.
So he decided, we're not Catholics no more. Fuck it. I'm making my own damn religion, and declared himself the supreme head of it.
It's good to be king.
It's good to be the king. And as you know, he went on to do a lot more wives.
Yes.
After Henry died, we had about 6 years of King Edward VI, who was the son of his third wife, Jane Seymour. He had a lot of them. And then, boom, we got Mary the First, Queen Mary the First of England. Mary was the daughter of Henry and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. As you can imagine, she might not have been totally a giant fan of what her daddy did to her mommy.
Sure.
So,
Hey, at least she died with her head.
right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there were other wives that were less fortunate on that front. So anyway, she was also raised Catholic, and she fucking wanted to switch it back. So she declared England Catholic again, and that caused a hubbub. As you can imagine, people didn't like being bounced back and forth between religions. I mean, life on the ground is tricky enough, but then when the person at the top of the food chain says, "Haha, you're all a different religion now,"
Yeah.
and then they're like, you're now back to the first religion. People were getting a little,
Which is pretty hilarious because they had all the same books.
Right.
It's all the same. Like theologically speaking, there's some minor differences that felt super major to them.
Right.
Divorce being one of them,
Right.
and whether the Eucharist is or is not Jesus. I don't know. There's a lot of like very, very small things where the theology is all the same, but we are going to argue endlessly forever.
Picture a small boy being yanked into a priest's office and then pushed back out and then yanked back in and then pushed. The religion changes back and forth.
Right.
Don't actually picture that. Don't do what Doug said.
It's illegal to even think that.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's kind of hilarious about all this, jumping many, many centuries forward, is if you know anybody in the if you know a C of E person now,
Right.
you can't imagine that they would kill anybody for any reason.
Right.
Let alone,
Right.
Yeah.
even inconvenience anyone for any reason.
Right. They would apologize just for being a different religion.
So at least we can say the C of E has mellowed somewhat,
Right.
since 15th century England.
Right. So anyway, just getting through this again. After Queen Mary came Queen Elizabeth, who wanted to end all of this, the strife, all of the back and forth, and declared. She basically declared the country to be Church of England. She had Parliament pass the Act of Uniformity in 1558, which basically said everybody has to be C of E, and she's the boss of it, and that's final, no takesies backsies. And if you don't go to her church every week and on holidays, you will be fined, and if you out and out rebel, you could be imprisoned or killed.
All right.
That is the oppression against which we hear our pilgrims bravely were
Our
rebelling.
quote-unquote pilgrim fathers.
Right, yeah, exactly. The big beef of the Puritans and then the Brownists seems to have been that the Church of England it was not theological. It was just that in her efforts to make the church palatable to as many people, as many of her subjects as possible, Elizabeth included too much Catholic shit in her Church of England. So the purity...
Oh, she got too much chocolate in the peanut butter.
She did.
Yeah.
And the purity that the Puritans wanted, it wasn't about theological purity. It was about being pure in how they practice their religion from the Catholics.
Because they're the worst.
Because they're the yucky poo-poo ones.
Right.
Yes. So that's basically where we start, how we set our scene. So, back to our little grumpy band of Brownists and Scrooby. Led by their intrepid parson, Richard Clifton, they were so incensed that they were required by law to practice one kind of C of E instead of another. They decided that they were going to set sail for the distant land of Holland.
Really?
Yeah, they ran away to Amsterdam and then later to another town called, what is it called? Leiden? Something.
Yeah.
I have it somewhere.
Good old Scrooby.
Good old new Scrooby.
Yeah.
Or Scrooby-Doo, as they called it.
The old Scroobers.
Right. The Dutch laws were a lot more lenient. Yeah, Leiden is the name of the place. The Dutch laws were a lot more lenient toward, just fucking practice however you want. They didn't give a fuck. So they were going to live there. Great, right? Solution presented. They are solved. They've got a place.
Yeah.
And then suddenly their kids started speaking Dutch or whatever, and they started like wearing Dutchy things.
Oh dear, wooden shoes.
And suddenly it was vitally important to these people that they not lose their English heritage.
Yeah, your son coming home with shoes with no buckles on them was like having your son come home with a nose piercing nowadays.
Right.
Right?
Or two buckles instead of one buckle.
So
Who
these
knows?
people were uptight in every arena of life.
Literally, they were just the most intolerably awful people that you can imagine. They cannot get along with anybody.
Huh.
So
It's kind of amazing that didn't infect the foundation of America at all. Like that.
weird that wouldn't
Horrible, intolerant.
this xenophobic
Yeah.
sort of outsiders suck response.
Ooh, we dodged a real musket ball on that one. fellas.
Right? So no, they decided finally that they would set sail for a place that didn't have any real people to speak of, just them brown folk that we can all ignore or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Dirt worshippers.
the dirt worshippers. They went. So they made some arrangements with some people, some merchants.
Yeah.
Words were not working for just a second there.
Well, it's the Dutch.
It's the Dutch. I'm translating from the original.
The original Walloon.
They jumped on a ship called the Mayflower, and actually another ship, the Speedwell.
Speedwell, which did not speed or well.
No, it sped right back. It didn't work. So
Half full of water.
so they
Sunk well.
Yeah, exactly. They went this three-masted ship, the Mayflower. They aimed themselves directly at the Hudson River and landed at Cape Cod. So,
You know what? By the standards of the day, that's a
that's
bullseye.
pretty good.
Have you seen their guns?
actually, by the standards of the day, that was not very good.
Okay.
That was actually pretty shitty. But they decided to stick. They found that one rock that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And called their area the Plymouth Colony. I just want look. I don't need to go through the whole. I chose them because it's sort of Thanksgiving time here in the Americas, and that's when we celebrate these people? Question mark. And I don't want to go through the whole thing with them and the Indians. There's a lot of apocrypha in there. There's a lot of all that stuff. I just wanted to point out who these people were. I wanted to introduce us to them because they weren't fleeing religious persecution in the sense of like, when I think of religious persecution,
It was a matter of taste.
It was just grumpiness.
Right.
And yes, people had been killed for being separatists in that way.
Right.
In large part because from Henry VIII to Queen Elizabeth, there had been so much upheaval in England that people were fighting each other over the religion.
And Elizabeth's like, I'm not fucking having this.
Right. Elizabeth just wanted peace.
Right.
And so her version of it, maybe not a great idea, was to just say everybody has to practice this exact way.
Yeah.
But they all believed the same shit.
All the same
Right.
shit.
So it's not like this is, this isn't Buddhists and the Rohingya. This isn't, this isn't religious persecution. This isn't China persecuting the Uyghurs,
Right.
or the Christians,
People who believe
or whatever.
radically
Or the
different
Tibetans.
things.
Right. This is just people who believe all the same shit being grumpy about how they believe it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really window dressing. They're killing each other over window dressing.
Right.
Yeah.
And eventually it leads to, the big overthrow, King Charles gets his head cut off eventually. All sorts of crazy shit happens.
Yeah.
Sort of surrounding all of this stuff. But I wanted to be clear that this is not this is not modern day persecution the way we talk about it. And for those of you who are listening who weren't raised in the United States, you have to understand that what we were raised with is this lionizing of this small band of 100 or so.
These noble, innocent, victims of persecution
Christ
found
followers.
liberty here in America.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Came to America seeking religious freedom.
Right.
Really, they really came to America because they did not want their children to assimilate into a perfectly Christian culture.
Dutch culture.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why they really fled.
They were fleeing wooden shoes.
right.
Yeah.
And can you imagine how
They
different...
were fleeing a second language.
Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine how different our history would be if they had named Plymouth New Scrooby?
First of all, this would be we'd be living in Australia now. Everything would have wackadoo names.
That's right. We'd be Australia.
Yeah,
We'd be Australia with snow.
Instead of bison, we'd have bing dongles.
That's right. Yeah, they were just a bunch of assholes.
Yep.
Let's not pretend they were anything but a bunch of assholes.
And of course, the Thanksgiving that we celebrate is theoretically a reference to a big meal that they had with a bunch of the Native Americans here, which did happen. Mm-hmm. It was a 3-day feast and whatever, and it seemed nice. Everybody was sharing and everything, and then we can just gloss over the next 200 years of history with the natives.
Yeah, knowing that they were originally assholes really helps inform what comes next.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And also, they weren't even the first colonists from England in these United States. The Jamestown guys were there before. So it's like, why are we caring about these people? Except that there was a mass migration of Puritans thereafter who kept pouring over here once the colony had been established.
Yeah.
Because they, because frankly, England didn't want them. Right. I wouldn't either.
No doubt.
And the Dutch who kindly took them in.
Right.
They said, fuck off.
Right, yeah.
We're going to take this sinking ship and get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the story of America.
Wow.
Founded by assholes.
That should be on the crest.
Right.
America founded by assholes.
And continued
and
to
still
be
run by assholes.
Right.
Founded by shitbags with buckled shoes and stupid guns.
Yep.
And nothing's changed.
So when you're cooking your bird and sticking. By the way, the first Thanksgiving actually had apparently there were turkeys, but there were also seals and swans.
Yeah, seals. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So I don't know.
Boy, it could be a whole different holiday.
I feel like we're not celebrating right. Get you a seal
or order your heritage seal now. You're going quick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Go enjoy your blunderbuss or whatever, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Remember the assholes that brung us here. Let's move on.
Moving on.
Well, Uncle Dan, Uncle Doug,
fellas,
hello.
Show after show, there's some people who are incredibly kind to us, and show after show, there's some people who have yet to be kind to us.
Right. I am officially threatening to quit if we don't make any money at this thing.
And I am officially threatening to quilt. So similar word, different outcome.
Yeah, and worse. Yeah. A worse outcome.
Possibly worse.
So anyway, but some people have decided that they would give us a little bit of their money.
And we love them.
And we love them for it. So we've got some folks to thank. First of all, we one of our donors, the giant black invisible aardvark that lives under the stairs. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mom.
How do you also be black and invisible? It's a mystery for the ages. We'll just go with that. Yeah. And then we owe some saints to some folks. So, Mark, I'm going to give you. Tori needs a saint.
Oh, Tori. Okay. Well, this is a middling saint at best, but effective. And, Saint Shitstick of Melbourne has got your back when the shit goes down. And Saint Shitstick of Melbourne is the patron saint of the North American Free Trade Agreement. And Karl Malone.
Great.
Karl Malone.
Karl Malone. With a K.
Baby?
With a K.
With a K, sure. Right. Absolutely. Or as my little nephew used to call him, Karl Lamone. He was his favorite basketball player. And I'm going to give a saint to Angela. And Angela, your guardian patron saint is Saint George of Tenochtitlan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't know George ranged so far.
Oh no, he's great. This is a different St. George.
And I like it's not Jorge.
Right, yeah. No, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
It's George. And
racist.
He is the patron saint of boats that can also go upside down.
Right.
And of large but not too large birds.
Yeah. The specificity.
Medium birds.
Medium birds. Not great, not
your
lesser.
Not your greater owl, nor your lesser owl.
Right, your medium owl.
Just your standard owl.
Right down the middle owl.
Yeah.
So, congratulations to Tori and Angela for getting sainted, for getting paired up with their own personalized saint. For the rest of y'all, if you're not already a patron of our show, you can go to howtoheretic.com, click on the patron button, and show us a little bit of love by giving us an amount of your choosing per episode.
Yeah, there's really no upper limit.
No.
The lower limit is clearly 0, but there's no upper limit.
Which you're already at. You're already there.
Most of you are already there, and we love you anyway.
You can jump up, though. You can level up.
You can always go up. If life has taught me one thing, rock bottom, it's just all up from here.
Right.
And if you can't afford that sort of largesse and still want to give us some love, go to any place where you can give us 5-star reviews and lay it on thick, baby.
Yeah.
Just hit it, and give us a written review if you want. And that'll be amazing for us, and we love you.
Yep.
We love you.
Moving on. Well, Uncle Mark,
Yes.
you're sitting over there looking for all the world like a monkey with glasses.
Well, maybe that's all I am.
One wonders.
One does wonder.
One looks at the ape world and at the human world, and one begins to ask questions.
The similarities with the simians that we share.
Which is the title of our new memoir.
Uncle Doug is a monkey. Because he's not here. So,
yeah, exactly.
So, evolution,
Yeah.
which is only a theory.
I like that you emphasize the evil in it.
Well, the only way I can say evolution is the way Richard Dawkins says it.
Evolution.
Evolution. So, what is it? What is it not?
Right.
How can it be used to confirm all my racial hatreds and misogynist fantasies?
It's a great question.
So we've back in episode 22, we had a little discussion
We did with Aaron Ra.
with our friend Aaron Ra
Yeah.
and his big brain, and talked about some interesting issues with evolution. But it's a big subject that requires more than one conversation, I think.
And that conversation got a little heady. We need some more conversation for sure.
Yes, so we've decided to bring in somebody that doesn't look like a warlock,
Oh, okay.
and that is our friend Professor Nathan, who is a professor of biological anthropology, specializing in anthropological genetics, whatever the fuck that bullshit is,
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a real thing.
and an all-around smarty pants. So welcome, Professor Nathan.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, was all that stuff he said real?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too many syllables, I know.
Yeah, I know. How do you even fit that on a business card?
College boy.
Right?
So
All right, college boy. Can we just call you that for the rest of the interview?
Sure.
So, there may be plenty of people listening to us have long emerged from religion, but there are people who are still emergent from their religious backgrounds who may not really know how to even begin to talk or think about this big idea.
Yeah, what we have here is a country and a world that has a lot of folk in it who reject the entire study that you have devoted your life to.
Yes, yeah.
So how?
Not only that, but has delivered your life to you.
Well, even my own grandmother, when I told her I was doing anthropology, said that's what people who don't know what they want to do with their lives do. So
Oh man,
it's
sick burn,
Is your
Grandma.
Is your grandma
Yeah, it's pretty
listening to this episode?
probably not. No.
Oh, what a bitch!
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you've evolved from 2 generations ago. So.
Yeah, I try not to let it get to me.
Yeah.
So, what we got is a bunch of folk who have been told their whole lives that the way humans and all the critters happened was that God done it, and
That's right.
and it just threw them all on here, and then we're all done.
Yeah.
And you maintain, I take it, that is probably not the case.
I of course I disagree. Yeah.
So let's start. So I think there's 2 ways to approach this, and we'll do both ways. So pretend I don't know anything. Obviously I'm a genius, so you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. So pretend I don't know anything about evolution and explain it to me, and then we'll explore what it is not a little later on.
Yeah, pretend that Uncle Mark has evolved a big brain with a good prefrontal cortex.
If you saw my feet, you'd be like, "Dear God."
Yeah.
He's a hobbit. So what do we got? What is evolution as it pertains to life on this here planet Earth?
So if we're speaking very generally, it's just change over time. So
Well, that's obviously not real. That never happens.
Yeah. So evolution is, here we're talking in a biological context. And so what we're talking about is populations changing pretty subtly over generations and generations, so that when many, many generations have passed, we can see fairly large changes. So, if you go back, say, 200,000 year plus, we might not see humans like we think of them now, but we're going to see something that's pretty human-like.
Right. And these are now we're talking about the fossil record.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I guess I jumped in a little bit there.
Well, no, I mean, it's just important to talk about this because here's the thing. You got your Ken Hams of the world. You got your guys who devote their lives to saying that the Bible is real, and all of these bones that paleontologists or whatever are finding in the ground don't prove any damn thing.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of damned lies. So
Planted
we
by
have
Satan.
Exactly, and we have to talk about the fossil record. But what are the motivations of this process? How does this occur over time?
Well, there's lots of actually different ways that evolution can occur. The one that people have most commonly heard of is natural selection. Quite frankly, it's part of my specialization, so I find it most interesting. But species can change randomly. They can change through interbreeding. If there's different populations with different characteristics, they can change through mutation. But most
mutants, I knew it.
Yeah,
I knew we were getting to the X-Men at some point.
I saw those documentaries. They're very frightening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the knives to come out of my fists. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen.
But most of the time, when somebody is saying evolution, they're talking about natural selection, right? And again, that's because it's the most interesting one. It's the one that is always kind of
So talk about that
front.
mechanism. How does that work?
So natural selection really. So you hear phrases like survival of the fittest, which I'm not a big fan of. That's a phrase that comes out of social Darwinism rather than science. But the idea is each generation is going to change a little bit. So not everything that's in the current generation, not everybody who's in the current generation is going to be in the next one, right? So people have different numbers of kids. Some people die. So each new generation, my kids, right? I don't think you guys have kids.
No.
My kids represent me in the next generation. Those who don't reproduce aren't in the next generation. And so we see this shift in how common something is, right? So anything I carry is going to be more common in the next generation than anything that you guys carry. Right. I'm just gloating at this point, but
No, I'm happy for that, actually.
Yeah, it's probably for the best.
I'm a narcissist, so
Well, and we're dingbats. So.
And podcasting is not an inheritable trait, thank God.
It might be. Yeah. Who knows? It's probably viral. It's probably carried on. Anyway.
So the name of the game then is really reproduction, which is, everybody knows that, right?
Right.
But so you hear about survival of the fittest a lot, or it's about who survives and who doesn't, and that matters, of course. But it's also about, and maybe more so, about who reproduces, who doesn't, in what quantities.
Well, and a lot of that can be, if a species sort of, for whatever reason, they survive better when the males are really big and strong, then the females start to choose big, strong mates or prefer big, strong mates, and then that just sort of passes that down. Is that sort of part of the deal?
Yeah. So the reasons that somebody might reproduce more or less, et cetera, are huge, right? It could be, that they are better suited to gain the attention of the opposite sex. It could be that they kill people of the same sex, and so they're the only option. It could be just that they're better at acquiring food. It just goes on and on.
Sneaky. I like the ones that evolve sneaky genes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sneaky gene is Dawkins' next book, I think.
I think that was his. It was going to be his first book, but it's too sneaky. Anyway. Sorry.
Poor Nathan
going.
just stares at us like,
I know.
oh my God.
It's like he's watching. He's watching evolution in action, in reverse.
Yeah.
So
Millions of years, and yet here we are.
right,
Here we are.
So the anti-evolutionists, the creationists, would say this hasn't happened. There's no proof that this has happened. How do you respond to that?
Right, and it comes down to the other idiot thing they say, which is it's only a theory.
Yeah, and that argument is mostly creationists trying to, intentionally or not, I usually don't know or care for that matter, but trying to divert from the actual science and just use the words themselves to discredit it. It's a semantic thing, and it's incredibly frustrating because a theory in science, of course, is not a guess, it's not a hunch, it's not a feeling, it's not even just an idea. It is a body of hypotheses and ideas that have been tested over and over again, and it's not beyond fallibility. I mean, we hold evolution in high esteem, but it's technically still true that we could find something that would drastically change our view of its correctness. But what's so unique about it, or not unique, but what is exceptional about it, is that it's been tested over and over. It's been put to that any time we study anything biological, that result is going to tell us something about the validity of the evolutionary process, and with time, it's just been upheld over and over and over again.
Right. For the layman like Dan and I, I would we venture into the dangerous realm of calling it fact. I mean, it is this is a factual
it's something
set
that
of processes.
It's like we can't talk about human evolution that much because it's something that happens over millions of years, but we've observed evolution occurring.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to expand it, you can talk. I mean, evolution is just a change in how common something is, and sometimes that means very large changes. But if this generation we have, 60% of people have brown eyes, and next generation 62% of people have brown eyes, we'd call that evolution. It's boring, really boring, but it's still a change.
Right, we're getting taller as a species.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I guess I don't know exactly what the cause is there.
It's just height is the cause.
Yes,
measurement is the cause. Yeah, of height, right?
Our measuring tapes have gotten a lot more sophisticated over the years.
They really have,
and we no longer use
our cubits,
forearms.
Yeah.
But one hypothesis there that I'm familiar with is that a shift to modernization. We demonize, and talk about obesity in the modern realm. But when modernization occurs, we do see this kind of normal increase in height and weight as the stress of not having enough food is lifted. So I don't know if that's truly evolution or if that's just cultural change. But I'm not an expert on that particular question.
But when people, I just want to point out that like when people talk about, well, evolution doesn't, because I've been to creation museums and they've got answers for all of the things that they think are being taught out there. Now they're not good answers.
No, they're not.
I mean, like
they're funny.
If you go to Ken Ham's Ark encounter, you're going to see, and they'll talk about, well, it wasn't species. It wasn't two of every species that was put on the Ark.
To every kind.
Of every kind.
Yeah.
Which is what? What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Nobody knows.
But they're very insistent that microevolution can happen within a kind, but there's not proof ever that one species has evolved into another species.
It is in such gaps that their God resides.
Yes,
right?
indeed, yeah.
Well, it's pretty convenient that a process that takes thousands, if not millions of years is not observable within a lifetime, and so they can rely on that lack of... What I see quite commonly is that they're expecting to see this with their eyeballs.
Right.
Like that.
Right.
That's the only way to observe something. Right? And
here's what's crazy is we can observe with our eyeballs. So, for instance, we can get into this in more detail, the canard that there are no transitional fossils, which is something that the creationists love to go on and on about. Whereas we can see loads of transitional fossils from one form to another, in the dirt with our eyeballs. We literally have transitional fossils.
yeah, absolutely. And as a geneticist, my specialty, the similarities between, you name it, really. But let's just take, humans, Neanderthals, chimpanzees, the other great apes, is fairly overwhelming. And we know things like the same shape, right? So you can look at animals that look very similar in characteristics can be fairly genetically distant. There's not this one-to-one relationship necessarily between genetic similarity and physical similarity. Now, usually things that are genetically related are pretty similar physically too, but they don't have to be.
Right.
So the question I always ask is, okay, if this is the result of creation or a common designer, why is the design such that things that, appear similar have similar DNA? There's no reason that has to be true.
Right.
But it is.
Well, there's no reason for DNA at all, really. I mean, it's frankly, I find I'm glad about having my body, and I'm happy that I get to move around in this world, but it's not a great design.
Oh, yeah.
Can we agree on this?
Sure.
Like, this thing is a kind of a turd in terms of a lot of things.
I mean, we probably should get some people in here who have higher self-esteem and see if that's idea
it's
still.
a podcast. That's not possible.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Those people are on television.
But I'm just talking about, like my breathe hole and my food hole are the same hole, so I can choke on things. Like, just little things like that. That would be a great thing to change, and then we'd be, like, if I were a god, I would have thought of that. Because choking on food is stupid.
Yeah, it's like Neil deGrasse Tyson says about the lower end of the body. It's an amusement park in a sewage treatment plant. Right. It's just
Gross.
Gross, I know, but still somehow,
but fun.
We still get down with it. But talk a little bit more about the idea that there are no transitional fossils.
Yeah, so this is obviously something anthropologists and I can comfortably say scientists in general don't ascribe to. So the kind of common answer to that is that every fossil is transitional, right?
So my fossil in 10,000 years will be considered a transitional fossil.
Well, not if you don't have kids.
No, but fuck.
Yeah, your fossil's worth nothing.
Yeah, that's all right.
You have to transition to something.
Why should it be different in death than it is in life?
Right, yeah, exactly.
So, the basic idea is those small changes I was saying before. Every new generation is going to change a little bit. And so you're transitioning. So you can think of yourself as a transition between your parents and your offspring. That's perfectly valid. Can you look at your parents, yourself, and your offspring and notice any huge differences? No, but the time scale there is so tiny, you wouldn't see them anyway.
Well, my parents are Trump supporters. So that should certainly be visible in the fossil remains.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, yes. When they dig up their skulls and see the MAGA just sort of scratched onto that, onto the foreheads there.
So yeah, every fossil is a transitional fossil.
Yeah.
But there are ones that are clearly an in between of. I saw PZ Myers talking about whale transitional fossils, and they're amazing. There's these amazing middle. Steps between very ancient and more modern.
Yeah, the whale's a great example just because the change is so substantial, right? I'm more familiar with the human fossil record, but in the case of whales, you're losing legs there. But we do, we see this transition in the Middle East from something that is land dwelling to sea dwelling, and they're just losing their hips and legs. And actually, if I recall correctly, you actually do sometimes get modern whales born with little vestigial things.
Wow.
But I don't, again, not my but as far as humans go, I think a lot of the time people are expecting us to be able to look at the fossil record, look at these things on the ground and say, okay, this person evolved from this person, and trace it back to ourselves, which that's very tricky for a variety of reasons. One, we have something called the fossil bias, which is just, jargon for saying that not everything that's ever lived is going to be preserved. And so we're dealing with this subsample.
Right.
But you can still see major trends, right? I can see in the fossil record when apes start to be bipedal. I can see when brain size starts to increase. And so while we might not know exactly which species gave rise to whom, this transition from a quadrupedal ape to this upright walking and then intelligent critter is very clear.
Right. And so that leads to another one of the classic creationist canards, which is, if humans evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys?
Yeah, and I see this one a lot, and it's kind of I don't know why anymore. I mean, I don't think I mean, I know why. I'm sorry, but even folk like Ken Ham have put up on their their answers in Genesis, like, hey, please don't say this because like,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
because it's
obvious.
so dumb.
Yeah, it's like this is not a good argument. I mean, and none of Ken Ham's arguments are good arguments,
Right.
but he recognizes how bad this one is, and the confusion there is that we're not evolved. And I'm just going to use chimps as a reference. People say monkeys. It's a pretty broad category, but our most related critter to us is the chimp. We didn't evolve from chimps. Chimps and humans share a common ancestor. And so if this change that's very slow is occurring over many generations, sometimes this is just change in a single direction, right? Humans 200,000 years ago aren't identical to humans today, but they're still humans. But sometimes they're splits, right? So if we go back far enough, there was a single species that, two groups of them got isolated from each other, and one would ultimately end in chimps and one would end in humans. And so humans and chimps are really cousins. One's not the ancestor of another. Right. So are humans evolved from an ape? Yes. Are humans evolved from any modern ape? No.
Right.
So am I a chimp or a human? Which one do we have to do like the 23andMe to find out specifically?
As your attorney, I'm advising you not to answer that. It could get really ugly in here. So, but chimps, in the same way we are still developing.
Oh, absolutely.
In whatever way they're developing.
Yes, a chimp today, you don't expect to look like whatever that common ancestor was. They've evolved too. We often, another point that people want to bring up is we don't know exactly what that common ancestor is, and maybe it seems unintuitive, but we don't have to know, right? We can figure out that it exists based on lots of, we playfully call it the Chuman, which a name I'm rather fond of.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we don't have to know.
Right. And I think we talked a little bit earlier about this bias that humans have, that we need to feel special among species, and that probably comes out of a lot of bad understandings of nature and some religious training, et cetera, but we are not none of the animals and the plants and the things you see in this world right now are the end. I mean, unless we fuck it all up and everything dies in the next election, which is entirely possible.
Totally possible.
But we're 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 years from now, whatever we are will be different. Whatever chimpanzees are will likely be different, right?
Yeah, I mean, this process is still continuing, and that's a much more interesting question than I think. I mean, no scientist is really, well, not no scientist, but most scientists are not arguing about evolution, but trying to figure out where it's headed, that's something that's really difficult to do. But yeah, we expect it to continue, right?
Ooh,
I mean,
I just thought, I guess suddenly it just occurred to me that one of the exciting, I mean, we've read all of the science fiction about genetic engineering and stuff, but like even if we're not like actively CRISPRing our genome or whatever, we can actually
affect it,
guide our evolution to some extent.
Oh, and we absolutely have. So, I mean, we've done, the first domestic animal was the dog,
right?
As far as I know, and we've fucked up the dog more than a little bit.
We mess with those guys.
Yeah, that's isn't that a great example to talk for people to understand a sort of selection, right?
It's dangerous, though, too, because they say, well, look, that was human-guided, and therefore human evolution must have been guided by something, too.
Oh, okay.
Insert God here. But it occurs...
But we're not talking to those dumbasses.
No, we're not. But humans have done it to themselves. I mean, we talk about, differences in reproduction. I mentioned that earlier. But cultural factors matter, right? So what's going on culturally affects how you reproduce. And so humans alter their environment, whether that's social or, you name it, climate change, whatever. We are going to biologically respond to that.
Right. Yeah, and I think about like advances in modern medicine, things that killed off humans for millennia have stopped killing us off.
Right.
So we're not going to be selecting as much for like, that person has the vibe that will survive the plague or whatever. You know what I mean?
And I would imagine that part of natural selection is, say, some a stressor like smallpox, right?
Yeah.
That we've now eradicated, hopefully. If these fucking anti-vaxxer parents will not bring it all back someday. But that's changed because there's a different outcome in offspring and survival rates.
Yeah, it seems like now we're selecting much more for brain power than we are for physical power the way we used to. I mean, in general, that doesn't apply in New Jersey, obviously, but I just feel like in a lot of places, like what we're selecting for is very different than what it would have been even 100 years ago or 200 years ago, let alone 3,000 years ago.
Definitely. And Mark's example of smallpox, I think it was Mark that said it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you think of like the plague in Europe. Lots of studies have been done about, okay, this is a lot of people dying off. That should fundamentally change what's going on genetically in this population.
Yeah.
And one of the neat findings is there were, genes that were selected for that increased in frequency because the people who carried them were more likely to survive the plague.
Interesting.
And the neatest, maybe not the neatest part, but a neat follow-up was that same gene seems to also confer or give an individual a somewhat innate protection against HIV. And so we have these folk who kind of are naturally a little bit more resistant, not immune, but resistant to the virus because of this.
Because of the plague.
Because of the plague.
Oh.
And part of the intensity of the plague was, and we've talked about this before on the show, was this bizarre fixation that European Christians had with cats, and that they killed cats in huge numbers. Cats were considered evil animals, and it was one of their only natural defenses against the spread of pestilence was cats.
Yeah.
And so
I still think they're evil, but they are helpful in keeping the plague.
they'll
at
catch
bay.
a rat from time to time.
They will.
Mark
Yeah.
has cats. Just
I'm a cat person. You're outnumbered on this show. Uncle Doug and I are both
That's true.
crazy old cat ladies.
You
so.
very much are.
We have the crazy old cat lady gene, apparently.
that one got through.
So,
yeah.
kind of to conclude, I'm just curious, what's one of your favorite kind of stories from, the world of evolution and kind of how you work in the evolutionary anthropology science, which is a very specific one. What's a story that's really terrific?
You mean like something that happened like prehistorically?
Yeah, whatever. It's just something that's a great illustration of evolution for our fans out there.
Oh, well, there are many of them. So I mean, maybe one of the most famous is lactase persistence, which
That's a milk thing?
it's a milk thing. So everyone's familiar with lactose intolerance, right?
Right.
And we have this tendency to think of lactose intolerance as almost a disorder, right?
Right.
And really, that's mostly a European bias. Lactose intolerance is the default human state. Most people are lactose intolerant. Lactose tolerance shows up as a mutation, 10,000-ish years ago, as a response to dairying, right? So when food resources are scarce and you're living in a field with animals and you've got nothing to eat.
And you see that little baby cow eating something.
Well,
On
and
the
people had eaten dairy before that. They made something called kumis, which is only worth mentioning because it's disgusting. They would take mare's milk and they would put it in a gourd and spit in it and shake it up, and it would ferment the milk sugar out of
It was
it.
booze.
It was mildly alcoholic milk,
Yeah.
room temperature milk. It's disgusting.
Blech.
If they wanted more protein, sometimes they would add blood to it.
It was a white Russian. It was a white Russian.
But raw milk has many more calories in it. So if you are facing starvation, if you can drink fresh milk and survive and not have the debilitating gas, diarrhea, all this kind of that wonderful stuff, it's hugely beneficial. So we see this mutation, which is quite literally a break in a gene. So most mammals drink milk when they're young and then can't drink it later. That mechanism broke in some human populations, and then it swept through the population like wildfire. So we see most Europeans who are descended from dairying populations back in the past are lactose tolerant now.
Ha-ha!
And
Suckers.
See, we're better.
What you do is you kick that little baby cow out of the way and you get yours.
I don't know.
Go get yours.
I don't think better's the right word, because some people who are lactose intolerant don't get symptoms. So what does this mean? This means these people can eat ice cream, get way fewer calories out of it, and not have the symptoms. So I mean, that's some bullshit.
That's
I'm
fancy.
fairly jealous of it.
That's an excellent mutation.
Yeah. And then I got my friend who if she eats a little tiny bit of any dairy just is miserable for a day and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she should have descended from the right people.
She should have. It's a matter of badly descending.
It's not European specific. We see it show up in parts of West Africa and the Middle East, but obviously, concepts of diet, especially in this country, have been dominated by studies on Europeans or people of European descent. And so you look at the food pyramid and there's dairy sitting as one of these big categories you should eat, whereas there's a lot of people who that's
just not possible.
Not a good thing at all.
Not a comfortable life.
Yeah, not comfortable. Yeah.
Right. And then there's, of course, the Jordan B. Peterson gene, which is just eat all beef.
Yeah. Yeah. And feel terrible.
That's also all of Argentina and Uruguay.
And it's clearly done wonders for him. So anyway, well, that's the evolution of Jordan B. Peterson, people. So that's been...
that's what we were really aiming at for this segment.
It took us a while to get there, though.
Yeah.
We finally made it. So with that finally achieved, Professor
Nathan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Dan is consonant intolerant, so
it's not easy for me.
It's a specialty. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And let's move on.
Moving on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or you can leave us a voicemail if you are one of the Pilgrim Fathers at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. We're also on Twitter at HowToHeretic. Quick note, our dear friend Professor Nathan invites anybody who has questions about evolution and the sciences there surrounding to ask him at his Twitter handle, which is @leftovermonkey. So
that's great.
Please avail
Awesome.
yourself of that amazing resource.
Awesome him.
Yeah, thanks once more to our patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thank all of y'all for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Wow.